Hello and welcome to another camera review. Today we are looking at Leica Q2, which is the latest camera to come out of Leica camera. It is a very beautiful camera with 47.3 megapixel sensor. It has again the 28mm Simulux lens, which is f1.7. Now, just to make sure that you don't get mixed up with the regular Simulux lenses, which is f1.4, this is f1.7. Yet again, very fast lens. It is going to be the standard on this lens camera combination, which is a fixed lens and point and shoot type of camera, which is a full frame. What we will see in this camera is a bunch of improvements, which I will mention. It still has some of the same features that it had in the previous version, which is the Leica Q. In the Leica Q, we had the macro photography option, the same type of Simulux lens, the same processor, which is Maestro 2. But here what we're seeing is a big jump in the number of megapixels from 24 to 47.3. So on that 47.3, you're going to be able to do better crops and get more resolution and high degree of contrast and high degree of image quality. And this is one of the reasons why this camera might become one of the flagship cameras from Leica. Now, for those who are familiar with Leica cameras, they are of course very expensive. This is no exception. It is listed at $4,995. That's not tax included, so it's about a $5,000 camera. If you consider the fact that you're going to have a lens plus a camera that is going to be a full frame, this is just about the right price range for a Leica camera. As you know, there are Leica M series and Leica SL series are also in the high range. Those are not with a lens, so if you look at Leica Simulux lens, it is on that $5,000 price range. So speaking of this camera as a package, it is a worthwhile investment if you're considering just the lens itself. Again, as I mentioned, the lens is not as fast as the regular M lenses or the Leica SL lenses that are f1.4. This lens is going to perform at max 1.7. So having said that, let's look at some of the features and let's discuss how you may be able to use this camera lens combination and get great results. First of all, you have to understand that this camera is not just a regular camera. This is a camera that is able to do macro photography. So let's begin with the macro photography. It can zoom in as close as 17 centimeters, that is 6.7 inches. So you can get a very good macro photography on that one. And then when you rotate the dial, you are going to be able to use it as a normal lens, which is going to give you a 30 centimeters as the closest focusing distance. It closes to infinity, of course. It is a lens that can be shot wide open, or you can close down the aperture. At wide open, the image quality is incredibly good, considering that this is a f1.7. So you are going to be able to throw the background out of focus, which is a key feature, and key features are the things that drive these cameras as point and shoot cameras to be bought. And this is a premium camera, of course. The closest competition is Sony 1XR, which is also a very good camera with high megapixels, but that's a 35mm. This is a 28 being the preferred focal length for Leica cameras, considering that they have those frame lines in their M series and other cameras. So this is one that is unique in itself because it's the only one that offers 28mm. Now 28mm is not the most popular focal length by far. It is a focal length that is being used a lot by journalists and reportage people to capture images indoors and outdoors. And for that reason, Leica insists on keeping it at 28mm, which is fine. But you have to understand, all your photography is going to be a wide angle photography. Now, what they have included, which is something I find silly, is the fact that you can crop the image within the camera to get 50 or 75mm focal length. I think that 75mm focal length on a crop is going to be the same thing as taking that image that you have and cropping it in post in Lightroom or other applications. For that, you are actually using a smaller portion of the sensor, and in itself it beats the purpose of having it. But From a marketing point of view, it makes incredible sense, because most people, they don't want to be content with just one focal length, which is 28. It can get boring, it can be limiting, and for that they give this option of having it in camera, just having a crop factor. Please do understand that this is not an optical zoom, this is just a crop. What that means is you're cropping part of the image. So it is something that people will use, but again, those who do not understand, and I have had this discussions many times, a crop 20 from a crop of a 28 millimeter to a 75 is not the same as using a 75 millimeter focal length. The compression is not there, the difference is significant, and the fact that you're cropping is going to reduce the resolution size. So what I say is, if you intend to buy this camera, try to use it, or use it at 28 millimeters and use it at full frame. That's going to give you great results. And again, when we look at this processor, everything else being the same, you're actually seeing a kind of a revamp of a camera that was very good in its initial design, and being continued on into a second generation with improved megapixels. So you're still having the Maestro 2, you're still having all the other features, you're still having the 50,000 ISO. 50,000 ISO is something that I need to mention. That's a high ISO number, and people intend to think that you can do low light photography at 50,000. That is not what it's meant to do. It just shows you that you have this gain that you can put in the sensitivity level on those sensor diodes, and then you can get images in that level. What I will say to you is that if you're going to photograph with this, you're going to do it for professional reasons, you should not go over 6400. If you do go over 6400, your images are going to deteriorate drastically. You're going to have noise at 12,800 and above. So it is best to use this camera at a lower setting, which is 3200 or 1600. Preferably your ISO should be as low as possible, and that's one of the things that I always stress in my workshops. Use your camera wisely, keep your aperture open if you need to, but keep your ISO low, because that's going to give you the optimum quality in terms of image and in terms of data, in terms of the gradation of tonalities that you're going to be able to capture. And speaking of capturing images, this has a 14-bit DNG file, which is going to be more than sufficient to pull out some important information, colors and shadows. And what I like about this camera is the fact that it has a very good color accuracy that comes with the heritage that has been instilled in the digital cameras from Leica. Now, most people think that you can have the same kind of image quality if you're using a high megapixel camera like 47 or 50 megapixel camera. That is not always the same. The difference is how accurate are those colors. So if you're taking somebody who's dressed in a blue dress and the background is blue or the sky is blue, the one of those colors, if not matched properly, is going to give you trouble in the post. That is why it is important to have a good color renditioning, a color science that is going to yield good results. Alternatively, of course, you can use a color chart. It's not always carried around, but it is able to give you the flexibility in the post, because your photographs are going to be captured in RAW. Those who want to use this camera and take it onto outdoors and take photographs and instantly share the JPEG images like they would do from a smartphone, you can transfer the data from the JPEGs to your smartphone via the app that they provide, and then you can post them on your smart device, whether it's Instagram or social platforms or Facebook. That is personally the choice that a lot of people make. For me, the image is best captured in RAW and then edited and tweaked, and all these images from my point of view does need a little bit of tweaking to get the optimum results. And then you can transfer that image into a JPEG format and then share it. Those are available on computers, PCs, and other laptop devices that have websites that you can upload these images effectively, so that you're not bound by just using smartphones. But having said that, the new generation of users, they like to not waste too much time, take the image, degrade the image in some form or another through filters, and then post them. Filters are the most dangerous element in terms of using these kind of cameras, because if you degrade the image, you are actually losing what all Leica has been providing you. That is a great accuracy in image quality and color, and then the micro contrast. For that, I think most people get it wrong because Leica is designed to be used as it is. It's a camera that is going to give you the accuracy of the colors. If you take it to Lightroom and you can tweak the saturation, the vibrance, the clarity, even the micro contrast, it's going to give you results that is going to be outstanding. What I do like is if you photograph wide open at f1.7, you're going to have a shallow depth of field even wide open. That means you're going to have a separation between the subject and the background, which creates that three-dimensionality. A lot of people miss this out. For practical purposes, I like to keep this camera at f1.7, f2. Prefer not to go up to above f4, because then what you're doing is, even though your sharpness is improving, you are actually losing much of the quality that comes from the bokeh. And bokeh is something that makes this camera unique. This Simulux lens that is on it is giving that benefit of being able to create that separation. And again, when we look at what is inside, we see that it has a DCI 4K 24 frames per second image quality for video. That is very, very important, because if you look at cameras that have come out, most companies do not want to put the DCI technology, which is the standard, which is 4096 pixels. They use what they call ultra high definition, which is UHD. UHD is not the cinema quality. It is designed for applications on social platforms, on YouTube or Vimeo. Those are things that you can share it. And what I will tell you is that if you are going to use this, it is going to give you that image quality that is at from 24 frames. 24 frames is the standard rate. You can go at 23.98, but this is the one that is commonly accepted as the standard. So you can shoot pretty much anything that looks good at regular speed, and you're going to get the motion blur that your eye will have. Beyond that, you can go to UHD format, which is going to give you at 30 frames per second, which is also very good, but that is a very different codec, different setting that you would have to understand that when you import it to a software like Premiere or other settings in Apple. What you need to do is you need to tweak these images a little bit so that when you transport it to YouTube or other platforms, that the compression is not going to destroy the image quality. That is very important, because Leica does not allow much flexibility in post for altering these images in terms of pulling the shadows, darks, and lights, and creating a much more worked image. So the applying LUTs is not an option. Basically what you have to do is you have to manually correct the color if you want to tweak the colors for using it online. Beyond that, it has a very nice function on the HD, which is 120 frames per second. That is going to give you a lot of slow motion, and that is going to create very dramatic images. And that is something that I always encourage people to do, is to experiment using different frame rates. For those who want to do dramatic things like dropping of something, or snow falling, or something being cast away, or making someone move in slow motion, that creates these beautiful images that makes anybody who looks imbecilic to be appearing like Superman. That is because that image of slow motion is what we have been associating films with, and we're seeing that superheroes and everybody else moves in slow motion when they are doing something fast. And that is something very important to notice here. And that technology here is very crucial, because you are able to get a very high definition image if you're doing photography, yet you can still use it to capture footage that you can use for your videos, and that gives versatility for YouTubers and anybody who's of the younger generation who can afford this camera to use it for these purposes. It is not by all means a camera like a GH5 that has been designed to be used solely for video, or it's not a camera that has been designed like S1R or S1 that is of different technology. Those are again very good cameras that are from Panasonic, but they are of a different league. The closest camera that we are going to see is right now the Sony's RX1R, which has a very good high resolution. It has very good features. Yet again, it has a 35 millimeter lens. This is a 28 millimeter. Again, what we should also look at is the construction. It has a Leica quality. It has very few buttons. It is being designed to be weather sealed. So it is designed such a way that it can withstand light rain, it can withstand light dust, but it is not by all means weather sealed. That doesn't mean that you are going to be able to seal this camera from immersing in water or having those kind of situations. It will be able to stand light rain, as I said, so do be careful. So that is something that has been written on the bottom of the camera for the number of that has been designated, that allows you to know that this camera can stand certain weather conditions. Personally, I think it's well-built camera. It's ergonomically nice. You can hold it, and it's compact enough to carry around. The Leica has a lot of accessories in terms of bags and holders, straps to be able to carry this camera nicely and comfortably. It is going to be heavier than the regular point-and-shoot cameras, yet this camera by itself is a camera that can be substituted to use instead of a Leica M. Leica M is a manual focus camera that requires a bit of skill, a bit of knowledge to be able to operate it. It's a rangefinder camera, and some of the younger generations don't want to deal with it, or they don't want to deal with the fact that you have to manually focus. So for somebody who's starting photography or wants to learn photography or has invested in photography, this is one option that they can use for taking photographs without having to think, because this is going to have that ability to capture that grandchild who's walking across the grass and have it in good focus. You're going to have the ability to photograph when you're traveling in Europe or in the United States or Far East. So those are all great options, and it's a versatile camera. For most applications, which you're going to talk about in the second part, this camera has a small niche that is very useful for as a second camera. One thing that people have been asking about this camera is the number of frames you can take. It is, Leica suggests that it can do 10 frames per second. I think that is a good rough estimate around what you can shoot. I would suggest that you can shoot 7-8 frames if you are doing continuous autofocus. This is a camera that I think is designed to be shot single frame rates, because when you look at the design, it's very minimalistic. If you want to go from single shot to multiple shots, what you need to do is go within the camera, change the menu, and then come out and take that photograph or those photographs. And then if you want to switch back, you have to again go into the menu and do this. So Leica is basically saying that this camera is not designed to be used in that fashion. Go take your photographs one at a time. That's the thing that we are saying. That's the message that I'm getting. So if you are going to use this camera, remember that is going to be a limitation. If you're going to do multiple shots, and that's one thing that is your cup of tea, then make sure that you set your camera into that multiple shot and be able to use that camera knowing how sensitive that shutter is going to be to capture that image. This camera is again one of those things that is going to need some getting used to. Although it's very simple, very intuitive in design, you have to understand there are limitations to this camera. First of all, you're going to find that they're going to use the same kind of battery that is used on Leica SL, and that battery is going to give about 360 shots with this camera. I think that is a pretty good number for the kind of battery that it has. There are other cameras that are going to give you a higher number of shots, But for overall, 360 is a good number to shoot for, and that is going to be sufficient. But if you're going to do a lot of photography and you want to carry this camera around, make sure you have some extra batteries on the side to use it. Now, the mechanical shutter has a 1/500th of a second flash synchronization, which is very good. Usually there's about 250, 320. Those are the numbers that is fine. 500 is a good number. Again, if you're going to use flash, there are a bunch of available flashes. There's SF60, SF64, SF58, which went out of production. But those are flashes that can go and work with this. Alternatively, if you get the SFC1, which is the remote that can work with the SF60, you can put the remote on top of this camera and use the flash as a unit that you can move around. That's an option. I think that this camera is mostly designed to be used for those who want to do street photography or wide angle photography or for nature photography. It's easy to carry around. For me, I think there are more than other things that needs to take into consideration. One of those things is that this camera still has only one single card slot. That is a very big drawback, but it is something that the way the camera is being designed. So if you're going to use it for professional reasons, remember there is going to be no second card to do a backup. You only have one card, so make sure that card is working properly and that you also have additional shots that is going to work well with this memory card. The memory card is the advanced UHS-2, which is compatible with, so it's going to give you plenty of speed that you can improve over the years. It's the good investment in terms of buying a Leica camera. You don't have to invest in a lens. It's point and shoot. It's simple. I mean, a 6-year-old can use it even as well as a 65-year-old because it is being designed to be a very simple camera. If you look at the back, you're gonna see there are only very few buttons. There's a very simple screen that is vibrant, very colorful, and it gives you a very good definition in terms of seeing whether you have shot the image well. So speaking of features, these are the main features of this camera. What we are going to talk in the second part about is the applications of how you can use this camera, how to get the best results out of this camera. So for that, stay tuned, watch the second part of our review, and we will be joining you shortly in that review. Thank you for watching.